Hello, my name is John Rose, and I have perfected a three-step process to help us get out of the mess we're in today. I'm taping this on August 30th, 2020, and we're still in a mess. Start off my day watching some really exciting videos of what's happening over in Germany right now, about how they're protesting about this fake emergency they're claiming and now using to control all of us. And of course the media is lying about the numbers and saying they stopped it, and yet they protest well till the early mornings, and I think some may have even camped out, I'm not sure. Recall August 1st, there were estimates of 1.3 to 3 million people that came out, and of course the media said there's only tens of thousands of people. They're lying again this time, and I loved what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said about his dad coming over to Germany, or his uncle rather, John F. Kennedy, is saying, you Germans are the only ones that are fighting against the powers that be. That's what made me realize history's wrong when I read a quote by JFK talking about what's going on in Germany. And that's really important for us to understand, because this is one of the most important things we have to do downstream to turn this planet around. My three-step process, however, is really more about going upstream. And the very first step that I have coincides with the very first step Tolstoy said we must take to go from a bad life to a good life. So my three-step process is the ultimate solution, because it helps us go upstream and correct all the issues that we're having to do damage control with downstream. But there are a lot of things we've got to do downstream, like put an end to this madness right now. That there is no emergency. There are no tests that prove this virus exists. And they're grouping everybody who dies. And if they have been given this test, they're said they died from that condition. So the case numbers are wrong, the death numbers are wrong, the whole concept of disease in itself is wrong. And that's what my first step helps us understand. And again, it coincides with Tolstoy. And I love coming upon people who confirm that I'm on the right path. And I read a book several decades ago called The Ethics of Diet by Howard Williams. And it came with the foreword, but I never read the foreword. It was an essay written by Tolstoy, a 25-page essay, over 14,000 words, 155 paragraphs, 10 parts. And it was called The First Step. And Tolstoy explained that there's a bad life and there's a good life, and it's like two stories in a house. And then there are stairs that we have to take to get up to the second story. And that these steps are sequential. You cannot skip the steps. And that means you got to start with the first step. So again, he said we have this bad life. And he said the reason why we have this bad life, because we have no control. We're out of control. In fact, that's the first step. That's the first virtue. So Tolstoy starts off with a good life, virtues in an order of succession that these steps must go through. And the very first step is the very first virtue, and that first virtue is self-control, or what Christians refer to as self-renunciation. And too many of us are focusing on these higher virtues. Look at me, I'm way up here, I'm doing all these good things, but I'm not doing what I should do for myself. Take that first step and gain control. Can't get to the second story where the good life is at unless we take that very first step. And what Tolstoy said about that bad life on that first floor is that, again, we have no control. And that we are gluttons. All we do is think about food and food and food and food. That's all that's on our mind once we reach a certain age, early adolescence or so, mid-adolescence. As soon as we get around that age, that's pretty much what dictates our life. Food, 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 food. We're gluttons. And you don't even have to be eating an excessive amount, what you might think is excessive, and be considered a glutton, because if you eat anything you're not supposed to eat, 1 teaspoon is gluttony. How much dirt are you supposed to eat? 0. You eat a teaspoon of dirt, you're a glutton. If you're eating food you're not biologically adapted to eat, you're a glutton. Oh, look at me, I'm thin. I'm not a glutton. You are if you're eating things you're not supposed to eat. Things are controlling you. There is no self-control. So for Tolstoy, the first step, the way to deal with this self-control is through fasting. Take a solid food vacation on nothing but water was Tolstoy's solution. He knew that was the only way to get up to the good life. Because we're on the second story because we're eating the wrong food. Again, this goes back to the book that he translated in Russian and he wrote this essay for, The Ethics of Diet by Howard Williams. Has around 85 or so of some of the smartest thinkers in the world. And Williams publishes this book in 1883. Tolstoy translated it and added his essay in 1892 when he was 64 years of age. But Williams was tired of people coming up to him saying, oh, yeah, this is a fad diet. He goes, no, it's not. I'll prove it to you. I'll go back thousands of years and have around 85 or so of the most brilliant people who ever lived, Plato, Seneca, Pythagoras, telling the obvious diet behavior connection. The ethics of diet. How can we get to the good life? It's the ethics of diet. No control, we're eating the wrong food. That's why we're in the mess we're in right now. If we weren't eating the wrong food, we wouldn't have colds and flus, and we would know that that diseases our body initiated, and that the system we have in charge right now is bogus. It doesn't work. The powers that be have chosen the least effective system out there to make sure we're sick and then still able to be controlled. That's why we're in the mess right now. Because our experts in health don't know anything about health. If you think that colds and flus are caused by germs and bacteria and viruses, you're missing the boat. That's not what causes illness. I explained the cause of disease in my video, Disease Mysteries Revealed. I'll put a link down below. I explained what our species-specific diet is in my video, What is the Healthiest Diet for Humans? We have to realize the role our diet plays so that we can go upstream and then not have all the problems that we got to deal with downstream. But right now, there's something we've got to do downstream. It's called civil disobedience. Stop complying with everybody. Stop wearing these face diapers that are so dehumanizing and are actually satanic when you look at it in more detail. So, I have a 3-step process. My first step is the same as Tolstoy's. In reality, there's only one thing we have to do. We've got to satisfy 2 groups of needs. But most of us are not willing and able to do that, which is why I add those 2 preliminary steps. And thereby creating that 3-step process. First step addresses the wellness issue. My first step is a solid food vacation on juices. It allows us to do something on a temporary basis so we can see what we're missing and take that second step where we're going to correct 5 main mistakes on a permanent basis. I explained that in my other videos I just mentioned. And then that way, we can then do the only thing we have to do. Satisfy 2 groups of needs, and I explained that in my video, What is the Healthiest Diet for Humans? One is based on the law of cause and effect. We have 12 essential needs. But then if we don't satisfy those needs, we end up with subsequent needs and subsequent causes that don't go away just because we remove primary causes. So now we have 2 groups of needs. This is why it gets a little confusing, because we have a species-specific diet, and it works for a lot of people, but it might not work for you if you don't live in the right environment. For me, I'm able to get sunshine every day, just about, where I live. It's only a few months that are somewhat questionable as far as being able to get out and get some sunshine. Of course, it rains here too. But otherwise, there are people who are living so far up north, you're not getting your sunshine. So we might need to modify what used to be our ideal diet in an ideal world. Now it's only our species-specific diet. And since the world is not ideal, we might need to take care of a few other issues, and I address that in my other videos. So what do we have to do right now across this planet is say enough is enough. We know this is not an emergency. We know the tests that are used have a 100% error rate. We know that you're classifying all deaths from people who have been tested positive with this bogus test as dying from it instead of dying with it. We know it's a scam. We know what you guys are doing. This is called biopower. Power over populations when it comes to their illnesses and their deaths and their births and their reproduction. It's how they control us. And we're sliding into what could be the worst form of government ever. Biosecurity, health security. in the name of health, you got to lock yourself down. No, I know the cause of disease. It isn't a little microbe going around and causing our problems. We're the problem, but we're the solution. That's the good news about this whole story. That's what makes you a hero. Remember, folks, if you don't know this, a hero is a person who can solve a problem or problems no one else can solve. But most of our problems are self-inflicted, especially colds and flus. Even heart disease and cancer and diabetes, these are self-inflicted. Good news, we're the heroes. You wake up to that and, ow, you're in for a treat.